Well, welcome everyone to today's Coaching Cafe. My name's Paula Jones-Hunt, for those who might not have met me before. And I'm going to take you through one of the trends that we identified last week, which is around burnout, mental health, and the right to disconnect. So, as I'm beginning, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional owners and the custodians of the lands on which we meet today and the continuing connection to the land, waters and communities of Australia and the lands from all around the world upon which you might be joining us. We pay our respects to them and their elders past, present and emerging, and elders from Indigenous communities around the world. And I also like to acknowledge anyone who's from an Indigenous background on our call today. All right, so having a look at what we're going to look at today. So last week we talked about the discussion trends in coaching for 2024, and one of them that we've highlighted is burnout, mental health, and the right to disconnect. So today we're going to look at some of these topics, and we're going to look at it from the perspective of, now that we know some more about it, how can we coach people in this space? And I think around mental health in particular and the right to disconnect ourselves, some of this is about our self-coaching as much as it is about the clients that we're coaching as well. As always, these webinars are all about creating community, about creating shared learning experiences, and having thought-provoking conversations. So being on my own today, I'm going to rely on you guys to be helping me out and to putting in questions, comments, adding to the conversation. I welcome it all. All right, so let's have a look. So last week, oh, and I forgot at the end, there's the ICF CCEs at the end of the session. So when we get to the end, hang on to the line and we'll have them for you. And thank you, Marissa. I know that you've got me. I have all the confidence in the world you'll be with me. So last week we talked about burnout and employee well-being. And this is one of my my pet. I'm really passionate about this space, and you'll hear it as we talk through. So if I get super fired up, it's because I think it's extremely important. And what Glenn Close said, the actress Glenn Close said, is what mental health needs is more sunlight, more candor, more unashamed conversation. And I highly agree with this. I think we've come from a space where nobody talked about mental health and you were hidden away if that was an issue, to a space where I've got a teenager and they talk about these things quite freely, which I really like. And I think it's about the spectrum of what mental health is too, is we know that it doesn't have to be at the extreme, that you can be at any point in a health continuum with your mental health. So in connecting in with that, there's a new legislation around the right to disconnect, and we'll have a chat about that. And I've got some bits and pieces for you. We also know, and we saw some figures last week, which I'll show you again in a minute, is around toxic workplace behaviours and the lack of psychological safety. So psychological safety came in, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, it gets away from me. But it's really about this idea that organisations need to create a space that is psychologically safe for people to work in. But it's actually more than that. It's not that you have to do it. It's that in order for people to thrive and have engagement and be connected, it actually creates a space where you also get innovation, and it really creates an amazing workspace if everyone feels safe to talk about things, to raise concerns, to bring ideas to the table. So if you don't have that space, then it creates this toxic workspace. The cost of living crisis, inflation and rising interest rates continues to impact people. And whilst you might be thinking, well, it impacts them at home, we're all humans, and so we bring everything we have to work with us. And so those sorts of things can have an impact. What's happening at home can come to work, just as what's happening at work can come home. And having mental health in the workplace conversations, having managers, having team leaders, having individuals, mental health first aiders who can have mental health conversations with people, that's really an opportunity to say, I see you and I've noticed something different. And based on that, let's have a chat about what we might be able to do to help and where you might be able to get that help from. And it's okay. It's very common for people to have mental health concerns. And we know the statistics that say the sooner you get help, the quicker the recovery. So let's have a conversation about that and see what we can do. All right. So again, and Marissa added in, it would be great to have more dialogue around support for folks who are neurodivergent. And I absolutely agree with this one too. Thank you, Marissa, because not everyone responds to things the same way. And in that neurodivergent world, there's things that are really particular for people, but it's not the same across everyone. It's this idea that we can't deal with everything in the one way. We have to deal with it in the way that that person needs it. So I absolutely agree. I think there's a great space in here around having neurodivergent conversations. So toxic workplace behaviours. The statistic we've got on the screen now comes from the McKinsey Health Institute around employee mental health and wellbeing, and they undertook a survey. And what it says is that in a toxic work environment, employees are more likely to leave. They're more likely to have burnout symptoms. They're more likely to be distressed. Their depression symptoms are higher, and they're likely to have anxiety symptoms. I actually saw a really interesting article yesterday too that talked about the fact that people who are resilient and are able to manage some of these things, so people who might be able to might be able to figure out ways to keep going, aren't actually going to help you in a toxic environment, because those people will leave when they identify that it's a toxic environment. Even though they have the skills to be resilient, they don't want to be in an environment that is toxic. So they will assess that and say, well, I'm out of here. So for organisations who are thinking we'll just go find a bunch of resilient people and put them in a toxic work environment, it's not actually going to work for you, because they make very clear choices as they are going through. Okay, so let's have a look at the right for an employee to refuse to, so the right to disconnect. So what the legislation that's passed says is that employees now have the right to refuse to monitor, read, or respond to contact or attempted contact from their employer or a third party in connection with their employment outside of the employee's working hours, unless the refusal is unreasonable. So there's a couple of things. So I'm going to put my HR hat on here, and I really love to do that every now and then. When I put my HR hat on and I read this, there's a couple of really important things. One is that when an employee is looking at this, or a leader, when anyone's looking at this, to be honest, there's a couple of things. One is the employee's working hours. So sometimes employees have work hours that are have extensions in them, and it really is just coming down to what is that the general normal work hours for that person. The other is the word unreasonable. And if anyone has delved into industrial relations law and read any of these documents, the word reasonable and unreasonable comes up a lot, and they talk about what would a reasonable person do. And so for some people, their jobs would have to allow for some contact outside of work. For example, lawyers, sometimes things come in that are outside of work hours, and it would be reasonable for them to have a look at it. But it is this idea about reasonable is what's reasonable for the role that I have, what's reasonable as per my contract, and that's where they take that reasonable bit from. But if you look at it as a whole, what it's saying is, if the matter is not urgent or it's not critical, then it can wait. So they're saying it's okay. The organisation can't require you to respond to everything all of the time. But if it is urgent or it is critical, then it is reasonable to get in contact with that person. So when we're thinking about this from a coaching perspective, one of the things we have to look at is for the person that you're coaching or the team that you're coaching is, how do you know and how do you define what urgent is and what critical is? And I think, if you can excuse my pun on this one, I think it's critical that that you have a definition for this. Because as we know, people interpret things really differently, and someone might think it's urgent, whereas someone else doesn't think it's urgent. So from a coaching perspective, we're working with managers and team members to get clarity around what is this urgent and critical? What can wait till tomorrow? What needs to be dealt with right in this particular time? And even putting together, if you're working with teams, is what are our rules around this? How are we defining this? What changes can we make in the work that we do that means that we define our things as urgent and critical? So from that right to disconnect, it really sits in, what is my understanding of reasonable? What is my understanding of my work hours? And how do we work with this? So I think also we don't want to remove flexibility. So I think COVID, one of the things that came out of COVID that I think was of benefit is that we've had a paradigm shift in regards to how we create flexible work arrangements. We don't want to lose that, because we know that people want flexibility and they need flexibility, and we keep people in the workforce because of flexibility. And so we don't want to take away that flexibility. We don't want someone, I jump on the computer quite early in the morning for Perth because it connects in with Melbourne time, and I spend a bit of an hour in quiet time before my kids go crazy. I don't want to not lose that time because it really works for me and it works for the business. But here is where it comes down to what the expectations are. I don't expect people to respond to my emails in the morning if they're not at work yet. And this is where we want to really define these things and say, it's okay if you're working at that time, but it's not okay to expect a response. And we don't expect, being really clear, we don't expect a response from people. There are things that you can do, and I don't know how to do it, I won't lie, but you can set it up so that your emails get sent at a particular time rather than at the time that you wrote it. So if you like working late at night, you like to have that hour where you just attack one certain thing, then that should still be okay. But it's the expectation of you don't want people to respond, and you don't expect people to do the same that you've done. So Marissa was just saying that it was a key topic in their leadership meeting this morning. So that's quite fortuitous, Marissa. So in regards to right to disconnect, I think it's really the critical piece here is having the conversation, being clear about what are your working hours, what is reasonable and unreasonable. But for me, the key is, how do we define non-urgent or urgent? How do we define critical or non-critical? And how are we going to manage this in the workplace? All right, so that's the right to disconnect, and I'm happy to take questions and other comments. Please throw them up there. The other thing I wanted to talk about is this term called availability creep. So, and I put a little creeping vine. If you think about our window to the world, the vine keeps creeping over. So availability creep is a term which describes the increasing encroachment of personal and out of work hours. So it's the pressure felt by employees to be constantly available to perform their work duties. And it's been facilitated by, if you think about technology, what an impact it's had on our lives, but the other side of that is what an impact it's had on our lives. So you can be sitting there and your phone's binging, your watch is going off, you get laptops sending it through emails, and we come to, as humans, we have this natural instinct that if someone's trying to get in contact with us, we feel like we have to respond. Something came through on my phone. The phone rang. I must answer the phone. And all of this, from a work perspective, I also think of it from a volunteer perspective for all those people who do volunteer work. And I don't know about you, but sometimes your whole day gets ruined because a WhatsApp message comes up that isn't what you thought it would be. And it, you know, there's all these impacts that come. So this is what availability creep. It's that you are available at all times. And technology has had a big impact on that. So from a coaching perspective, how do we help with availability creep? And I think it's about having conversations with people to find out what else could you be doing with your time if you weren't responding to these messages come through. How can you manage the messages that you're receiving or the interruptions you're receiving? How will you manage those? What changes can you make that would mean that you are responding to them in the way you need to do that, as opposed to just feeling like you have to respond to them? So Ian's added in that it takes frank conversations with management to clarify expectations and agree on them. And I agree with you, Ian. But it's one of those things that if you set it up and you work with it, yes, it is. It's going to be a difficult conversation, and there might be you have to think about what questions can you ask going in there, and what do you need, and what makes sense for you. So from a coaching perspective, how do we help people get clarity so that when they have that conversation, they know exactly what they want when they go in there? And also volunteering is one where people feel obliged. You know, I myself, I've been on the president of the P&C and the football committee, and all sorts of things happen, and we feel like that we have to respond instantly, and it's this availability creep moving in that says, you know, oh, I've got to have my phone with me at all times in case there's a message, or I'm doing something with my kids and I've got to be checking my messages all the time. So I'm happy for people also to pop in some questions that you think are great coaching questions we can ask people. I have a bit of an economics background, and so I always like the question of what's the opportunity cost of doing those things? So what else could you be doing with your time? How would you feel if you weren't taking those messages? What's the impact of you taking those messages? What changes in your mood when you receive the little bing? And then moving into so what changes can you make? What could you be doing differently to get a different outcome? So working with our people around, and in a team perspective, these are great questions to be asking. Yeah, Marissa put in the Cartesian questions, absolutely. Ben added in, what would change if you didn't respond straight away and waited until you were working next? Great question, Ben. If people didn't write that one down, I strongly suggest that you do. So this is where there's this opportunity to start asking questions and finding out, you know, what difference would it make if you didn't respond at that point in time? What impact would it be for you if you put your phone down for an hour and then had a look at it? How could you change this? Oh, I like that one, Scott. Scott said, what are you afraid of? I really love that. And he also added in that he coaches more people whose bosses don't expect them to respond in the evenings, but they still can't stop checking their phones. I agree. I think this availability creep is an individual thing, not necessarily something that employers have. I think there's some environments that create this space where there's this expectation that you have to. And when I worked at Visi, Richard Pratt had a saying that said he only expects his employees to work half a day. And according to him, half a day is 12 hours. So if you're not working 12 hours, you're not working half a day. That's an environment where there is an expectation that you respond. But there's lots of others where people who are intently want to do a really good job are thinking that that is them doing a really good job. But the flip side of this is from a mental health perspective, we know that people need downtime. We know that people need good sleep. We know that people need to exercise and be out moving. We know that people need to have connections with other people. So how is each individual person finding space for that, and being able to meet the obligations of the work that they want to do? And this is where I think those questions come in that say, how do we find this balance so that it means that you get everything that you need? Because if we flip also to the idea of when you're on an airplane and the mask drops down and they always say you need to put your mask on first, how do you put your mask on first so that you are the best version of yourself for everyone else and the people that you love? I'm just going to come back to these questions. So Marissa added in, what would having a clearer line between work and personal life mean for you? That's a great question, Marissa. Scott said, most people don't change their phone defaults, which means they let Google or Apple decide which messages they see. I didn't even know you could do that, Scott, so thank you. And I think you're right. Why are we allowing technology to drive our lives versus having ownership? I don't know about anyone else, but I don't like giving up control of anything. But we seem to do that. We seem to give control to bings that come through and messages. Scott also added, what do you want your life to look like? It's a great one. If you closed your eyes and you woke up tomorrow and you were living your best life, what would that look like? What would you see? What would you feel? And he also said, move the email alerts off the first screen. It's also, and it's even when you're sitting at your workspace, there's this, I think it's this natural desire that says, if someone's emailing me, I must be important. They must need something from me. This, it adds something to my life that I'm getting emails. And then you end up with thousands of emails and realize that it's not all that you need. I tend to go back to also, in the olden days, if you wanted to send someone a written message, you had to type it out and it got hand delivered. I'm glad we're not in that space before, but people really thought about the fact that whether they were prepared to write it, to type it up. So I think it's still worth thinking about those things. All right. So one of the other tools that we really love from a coaching perspective when you're thinking about mental health, when you're thinking about work-life balance, when you're thinking about how do I really focus my time where I want to focus my time. And we like to use this tool, which is the stop, start, less of, more of. And I actually used this with my son this last weekend. He's 10. So for anyone wondering, can you use the coaching tools with children? You absolutely can. And it was really interesting to watch him make his own choices and decisions and think about what this looked like for the issue that he was talking about. But you can do it at any point in time. This is one where, you just pull it out and go, if I'm frustrated about something, what is it? What's my goal? So making sure you're clear about what that goal is, and then thinking about it from the perspective of, what could I stop doing now? Now, this has to be realistic too. So there are some things you can't stop, but there are some things you can. When you really think about it, there might be something that you can stop. What's some things that you can start doing? And my favorites are what could I do less of and what could I do more of? Because it's not taking things out completely. It's looking at the perspective of, what could I change so I'm not doing as much of this? Or what could I do more of that would bring me joy? What can I do more of that would bring me closer to the goal? What could I do more of that would contribute to me meeting this goal? And then working out what those actions are that you're going to take as you're moving forward. So if we think about it from a mental health perspective, if we know that great mental health comes from more sleep, it comes from good quality sleep, comes from exercise, comes from eating well, comes from disconnecting, comes from relationships. Think about it from that perspective. Of those things, what could I stop doing? What could I currently stop doing that's not contributing to those? What could I start doing? It could be as simple as, I'm going to meditate before bed. I'm not doing that. I know that would help me, so I'm going to start doing that. Really simple, but how would you feel if your sleep suddenly improved? How might that change your moods? How might that change your decision making? How might that change the relationships you have with people? So thank you, Scott. He said this is a really great tool. It's clear, simple, doable, and I absolutely agree. You can sit down and pick any topic you like and have a go at this one. And I do think from the mental health perspective, from the right to disconnect, from availability creep, there are really small things that can start an avalanche that if you pop it down into this tool, it will start you moving. It'll start helping you get to where you need to go. Has anybody used this tool, and what have you found in using this tool? I'd love to hear from people, or any other coaching approaches that you have used in this space that you think could also enhance people's experience in this space. Feel free to pop those into the chat room. And if anyone has any questions about the right to disconnect from a HR perspective, please put them in. I will absolutely happily answer any and all of those questions. Okay. So there's a couple of things I just wanted to talk to at the end. So for those of you who've been through our programs, you know quite a lot about them. We currently have a leader as coach. I deliver the mental health first aid. So anyone who would like to become a mental health first aider, we have a program where you can do that, and we run them in-house as well for organisations. We have our certificate in workplace and business coaching. We also have, and our next program is starting in May, and we have a diploma of organisational coaching. Now, one thing I just wanted to add in here too is for anyone over the age of 40, and I happily sit myself in this one, there is some government funding that's available at the moment that's not means tested. And it's basically because the government has realised that we are going to, that us older people, they won't be able to pay us all pensions, so they'd like to keep us in the workforce a little bit longer. And so this is to help people to be able to continue to keep them in the workforce. So if anyone's out there who's completed their Cert 4 and wasn't sure, liked the idea of the diploma, the government funding provides for up to $2,000 towards that program. So it could be for you. It could be a friend might have said to you, I really want to do some coaching and, not sure about it. This is an opportunity. If you would like to go find out more about it, the company is busy at work that you have a look at. If you would like to have a conversation with me about it and I can take you through it, we can absolutely do that as well. So just as we're finishing up, Marissa put in the Eisenhower box for prioritisation. This is a good one too. This is about really making clear, conscious choices about what are your priorities, but also if you're talking about it from an organisation, what are the organisation's priorities? What's from a manager's perspective? But being able to say it's a bit like that. Is it an emergency? Is it critical, or is it something that can wait? Making sure that we don't forget it all completely, because we still have to do the things we need to do. But being able to really prioritise that and focus on the areas that you need. Scott said, I've heard it framed as pick up, put down, and used for individual performers changing to a new manager, broken down into behaviours and attitudes of values. So what are you going to pick up and what are you going to put down? I like that. All right, I absolutely appreciate all of your input today. Next, some of the other trends in coaching that we talked about included AI, and we might just be having something come up in the next coaching cafe. So look out for that one as we go through. But I would like to thank you all today. I've really enjoyed your input and sharing some information with you. And we will see you next week. I'm just going to see if I can stop this recording.